Welcome to the Reclaim Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Season Hathaway. I am an NASM certified personal trainer with a specialization in prenatal and postpartum bodies. I'm here to empower you to find movement and exercise that is realistic, doable, and most importantly, meaningful to you as a mother, a caregiver, and a birthing body. I'm here to challenge how our bodies are talked about in the fitness industry. No more blind acceptance of weight loss and no more guilt and shame. Let's advocate for ourselves and reshape the fitness industry together. I'm so glad you're here. And welcome. Today I am excited because I have a client of mine here today and a friend. Her name is Kristen Muson. Is that how you say your last name? I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's Mate. It's my husband's. I don't know.
You're like, I don't care.
You can pronounce it any way you want.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry I didn't ask that. I didn't clarify that before, but Kristen here is here with us today. She is a client of mine currently. She's in my Misfit Moms Club. She did my my Reconnect, Rethink, Revive masterclass with me, and she is a mother of one, a new mom. She's her daughter is almost 1 year old, so she's a new mom, pretty newly postpartum, right? Within a year. In the past, she's done some Les Mills classes with body combat and body balance. As of right now, she's working for the Pebble Beach company in retail design. So she's a very creative person that's just super dynamic, does all these different things. I love hearing about her work because she gets to do so many things with her hands. And I can imagine a lot of creative design things that it blows my mind. People who are able to do that. I do not have that ability. And she loves traveling and being social. And today I have her on with me today because I really want to bring some postpartum voices onto this podcast and give people a chance to share their postpartum experiences, because I think a lot of us reach that postpartum time and we kind of say like, what, nobody told me that this is what was going to happen. This is how it was going to be. And so I want to give all of us not only a chance to speak and talk about what matters most to us as birthing bodies and postpartum women, but also give those who are moving into that space a chance to hear what it is actually like for a lot of people and hear, maybe not the not so pretty parts or the parts that are really challenging, and also, the beautiful parts as well. But I really, I've been just so inspired by Kristen and watching her grow through her postpartum experience and just be her amazing self and continue to look for herself in the midst of this period of time. And also, she has had an exceptional postpartum experience, which we'll learn about in a little bit. But I am just so glad that she's agreed to come on with me and speak with me. She's just such a beautiful person, and I have so enjoyed getting to know her the last few months. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, you're going to make me cry within the first 2 minutes. Oh my goodness, it's so nice. Thank you for giving me, this space to share my experience. Because, yeah, like you said, it's not cut and dry, and everyone's experience is different.
Yes. Yeah. It is. Yeah. And for those listening, to keep that in mind, right? Like, everybody's experience is extremely different. And, whether it be our body experience or our, the emotional experience, and there's so many places that it could be so different. And so that's part of why I'm looking to bring on lots of different people and different experiences so that, we can see that all these things are normal and, it is just really, really hard in a lot of different ways. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, I would love to start with just having you talk about whatever you're comfortable with in your early postpartum experience. If you want to talk about your pregnancy or your birth experience, if that feels like something that's really standing out in your mind right now, I go for it. I want you to just, whatever part of your story you'd like to tell us in terms of that early postpartum experience, go for it. And then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah. I had, I loved being pregnant. It was great. I was going through the Monterey Birth Center, so I just really wanted this birth at the birth center. So I was very thankful to have the birth I envisioned. Um, and everything seemed like it was going to plan. And then postpartum hit. There's challenges in the healing process.
Mm.
I had this expectation that in 6 weeks all would be shipshape and everything would be great. I could work out, I could have sex, I could do all the things just like I did before. But after having my daughter, I had second degree tearing. And from what I was told, it wasn't going to be that bad, right? You get some
Mm.
stitches and it will heal. But I had some nerve damage that came along with it. And then later down the road, I had granulated tissue that just wouldn't heal.
Mhm.
So it was just difficult even standing, especially standing and holding my baby. By the end of the day, I just was in pain. And this
Mm.
lasted like 4 to 5 months. And I was worried because I was going back to work. And I personally was frustrated that I spent my entire maternity leave in pain because I had this idea that I was just going to be with my baby and doing walks and having this
Mm.
time to bond. But I feel like the pain really hindered that experience. But I was really lucky to have, the support I had. I had my husband, which he did like all the chores.
Yeah.
Both like during my pregnancy and after, I was just like kicking back. I don't know.
That's
He
great. Yeah.
really took care of everything, and my mom lives close by, so I was really
Okay.
lucky to have her. And I had resources. I had a pelvic floor therapist to help with my healing.
Mm.
I found your program that really helped as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, my postpartum journey in the initial months were pretty rocky.
Yeah.
And also Stevie had trouble feeding, so she had a tongue
Mhm.
tie. So I was just watching my baby just losing weight, and that was
Mm.
really messed with my mental state. I had a lot of postpartum anxiety over that.
Yeah. Oh man. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that. I mean, that is such a real and typical. I mean, honestly, it is a very common experience among so many postpartum women. And I think it feels, like you were talking about, you have this expectation of what your postpartum is going to look like. And I think a lot of us move into our third trimester of pregnancy kind of, especially with our first baby, not really knowing what to expect, right? And sometimes we have this picture in our mind of what we would like, which is fine. I think we are allowed to have that, and that is a good thing to have. But it's really, really hard when those things um, don't come to fruition, right? When it's something like pain is playing a part in it, and it just takes over your entire experience, and it feels like maybe something was taken away. I know for me, having experience with postpartum anxiety and depression and feeling like there was a big chunk of my postpartum experience that was almost like um, taken away from me, that like joyful experience that I wanted to have, or that like calm, like all together. I have everything put together, or I'm just like, in my pajamas and enjoying my baby, right? And when you have something like pain or anxiety or these other things that are kind of injected into that experience, it's just not something. I mean, it's obviously not something you plan for, right?
Sure. And you know, before I had Stevie, they do try to prep you for postpartum depression and the signs to look out for, postpartum anxiety, all that. But I feel like until you're in it, you don't really. There's just no way to prepare for it. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I I think hearing other stories is the best preparation and kind of the best. I don't know. Just hearing everyone's experience, different experiences, just to know that like, okay, my experience is different than my friends over here. It's not that I'm not having this great postpartum experience. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
it's good to kind of just know that everyone's different, and I didn't heal as well, but maybe the next time I will. And
Yeah. Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying, and that it's like it's nice to hear lots of different stories and realize like, oh, okay, there's like all of these different things that we may need to overcome in postpartum, and each person kind of experiences a different part of that. And
yeah.
I wonder if you feel like you received the support, like it was like, how easy was it for you to find the support you needed for those things those hardships that you kind of experienced during that postpartum period? Would you
Mm,
say that, did you feel, I mean, it sounds like you had a really good support system,
yes.
kind of
I
already set up.
I did have a very good support system, and I do feel like the midwives really had so many resources at their, you know, at the ready. But I guess I just, especially with Stevie's feeding,
Mm,
the the thing that was hardest for me is that it was like alarm bells, right? It's just like she's not feeding, she's losing weight, you need to do this, and I wasn't prepared to days after giving birth, having to take her to so many appointments, having to, try to figure out this why she's losing weight and this problem, and talking about tongue tie revision so early. I'm like, my baby is 2 weeks old. I guess I had the resources, but I wasn't mentally prepared to go down the list of doctors and go to all these appointments and just
yeah.
run around town. I had to go to San Jose to get her revision. So that was challenging for me, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that is such an exhausting process, even if you are like fully in a state of like not of having slept well, right? And being like in
Yes.
your right mind, right? And
Yes.
having had just experienced a birth experience, and you're exhausted in that newborn stage, and like to expect to have the problem solving skills that you need in order to find the right provider and find what you need, and then like even just like getting in the car and driving places and making sure you know where to go, and like even at the very basic level of like
Yeah,
preparing for those things is so hard.
it's so hard. But I did have a good support group at that time. Like my doula came to my house. I had Krista from Earth Milk Moon. She came to my house, and
That's
just
awesome.
you know, my doula and Krista, they were just my doula Jamie. They're just big hugs of
Yeah.
people, like
Yeah.
it was support for Stevie, but also a big support for me too,
Yeah.
because my husband didn't quite understand, and my mom didn't quite understand because she didn't have this issue with either of her kids. And yeah, it was just nice to be heard and held.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. Even just that of being held and heard. I think that's something that, especially the first time around, we kind of expect, um, unless someone really helps us or walks us through what to expect, or even just let you know, like, you should have a doula, or for these reasons, then sometimes I think we put a lot of that responsibility on our partners or on our family members. And even though they want to help and they're there and they're trying to support you, sometimes it's just hard to expect them to really know how to support us during that period of time, because they've only been, for our partners' sake, they may have never been through a birth before. And then for our moms and our family members, like maybe one or two, unless they've been have this like exceptional experience, birth experience, um, to expect them to be able to provide us with the support we need, because we don't even know what we need at that point, right?
Yeah. And also, I feel like my husband and my mom, just like many husbands and mothers, they come with this fixer mentality. So they want to fix the
Mm.
problem. But sometimes I just want to be held and heard,
Yeah.
and no fault to them. It's how I am with them as well. I'm also a fixer personality, but they don't have that experience. So it's hard to, they don't have that professional experience. And my doula
Mhm.
and lactation consultant did. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, they are just so invaluable. It's, having a birth worker of some, that has had experience in that space, whether it be a doula or a midwife, or even like a night doula, or someone to come, or a night nurse to come and help you with getting a little extra sleep or something, or even just listening to the hard, the difficult things that you're going through. That can be so, so helpful. I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that is such a helpful thing for people to know, because I think a lot of people don't really think to dedicate either the finances or the time into, investing in a doula or someone like that to help you postpartum. You think like, I'll be able to do it on my own, or I have my family to help me. And it really is different, right? Having
yeah,
that kind of experience, that present.
it is really like indescribable. And I think that was the best, um, it, it was the best preparation was to have these people, you know, to have these resources ahead of time. So when I was in that state of like alarm bells, that I could go back to my birth workers and say, I need help because I'm overwhelmed, and it helped a lot with my postpartum anxiety.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That I could see that. I know with my second time around, I like knew what I needed, like you kind of have a better idea, but yes, absolutely, when it comes to like postpartum anxiety, and it just to be able to be heard, to be able to have someone to like bounce off your feelings and emotions, that has experienced that before and knows kind of how to respond in a way that can be more supportive, is just so important. Awesome. Okay, so what I want to know also is, you talked about some of the physical symptoms that you experienced. What was it like getting back into movement and exercise for you? Because I know, like you said, you kind of you just expect it at that 6 week mark, right? Which I think we all kind of do. We all think like, okay, we're going to go back to the doctor. And they often do say like, you're good to go. You can either start having sex, start doing exercise, go for it. And then some of us kind of leave that doctor's appointment feeling like, I do not feel ready for this, or I don't know, you know, I'm not at the level I want to be here to get back into movement, or I don't even know what to do. So tell me what your experience was like with that.
Um, yeah, at 6 weeks, I was definitely not ready. I still had tissue that was needed to be cauterized, and I feel like after I started feeling better, I was excited to get back into exercise and movement, but my body wasn't ready to do the level of exercise that like my mind wanted to do, because
Hmm.
coming from a fitness background, it was always peak high intensity interval training, like, so I just didn't know where to start now that I'm not at that level. I
Hmm.
was pretty active throughout my entire pregnancy. Like, even up until my water broke, like, I was walking around the golf course with my husband. I came home, I ate a big sandwich, I stood up, and my water broke. So
Yeah.
I was I was ready to move. I mean, I had a good time watching Bravo on my couch for a few months, but I at a certain time I was ready to move, but I just didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
It's
was
like,
pretty overwhelming.
yeah, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Coming from, so being someone who comes from being able to move their body and kind of control what they're feeling and how that feels for them, and being used to going at like 100%, and then like moving into a space where that's not really an option. And then it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Right.
Yeah, definitely. It's like thinking about doing a plank. I was like, nope, that's impossible. That's impossible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what exactly, I mean, you did enter into my program, and you also were seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist, right?
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
what how did those things help you as you moved into movement again? How would you describe your
Um,
experience with those things?
it helped me a lot, your program, because it was like a ladder. Sometimes
Mhm.
when I think about fitness, I think about the end goal, and I think like all the steps all at once. I just look at the big ladder and I'm like, that's too high. That's crazy. That's too high. I can't get up that ladder. But with your movement program, it was easy for me to do one step at a time. I'm like, okay, I'm up the first step. That's great. Okay, one more a
Mhm.
week later. And the pace was really great. And by the end of it, I was doing a plank, which I never thought I would be able to do. And then with my pelvic floor physical therapy, she also, had me do a lot of movement that was gentle but nice and stretching. Um, and and also some hands-on like massaging, and so that really helped stretch the scar tissue and area. So it made the movement a lot easier. It made me doing your program a lot easier to have the two working hand in hand. Um, yeah, and
Yeah. That's yeah, that's awesome. I feel like that kind of tandem, um, working with a pelvic floor physical therapist, which I can't ever say enough about, in terms of, our postpartum healing process, especially if we're having um, a lot of symptoms around our pelvis and our pelvic floor and a lot of pain. They can really help us come up with a plan to like move into movement that makes sense for us, right? And not feel so lost and like floating out into the ether of postpartum all by ourselves. They help you move into that space of feeling like you have a better understanding of what's going on with your body. And then that can help you move into a space where someone like me who can like help you take one baby step at a time, right? And I mean, you put in the work of being consistent and um really dedicating that small amount of time every day. And I hope that the program made it easy for you to do that. But it was amazing seeing all of you. You were part of my first cohort, so it was really amazing seeing all of you guys make gradual progress towards just finding that comfort in your bodies again and finding that little bit of strength that can really my whole thing is like empowering you guys to move into a space where you feel like you can get back into movement that you love and that it feels a little more attainable, right? So
Yeah.
I'm
And
glad
it
you
was
feel
great
that
to
way.
be just with a bunch of awesome moms and to kind of just be in it all together. I know when you started the cohort, like Mila was just 4 months old,
Mhm.
and I had my little 8 week old, and it's just, and it's fun to see us grow along with our
Mhm.
babies.
Yeah, I know. They grow so fast and they're all right there with us, and it's just so nice to have that community and support of each other just moving through that period of time. That is invaluable as well. And I truly believe like one thing that we aren't getting as we kind of isolate ourselves these days is the support and knowledge and wisdom of other women who have gone through or are currently going through what we're going through, right? Like we may have the support of our mothers or of other generations of women, but they're not currently going through what we're going through, and having that support is just so important as we do it, like knowing that we can um kind of lean on each other and find, even just know that like some of the things we're going through and some of the emotions and the feelings that we're having are like normal. Or at least, like someone else is experiencing them on some level too, then it just you don't feel so alone.
Definitely. I feel like every phase there's something, right? There's something we're going through. And once we go on to the next phase, sometimes we forget about the old phase. So,
Mm.
like, my mom may not remember that one phase that I'm struggling with, but if I'm with other moms, they're sometimes on the same page as me and they can kind of relate and we can just cry. We can just complain about this one stressful part that there's one phase that we'll hopefully move on, but
Yeah.
we'll get through it. And it's nice to have the support at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I had someone not the other day, a couple months ago say she had like her little baby and she was like somebody asked we were just a group of moms hanging out and someone asked like, "Do you mind if I hold him? It's okay if you say no." She was being very respectful and the mom was like, "Oh yeah, it's totally fine. I almost feel more comfortable having you guys hold him and as opposed to like my own family." Cuz my like his own grandparents like they haven't held a baby since I was a baby. It's been like 30 something years, and so it's different, right? There's like a different connection to like
Yeah,
other moms that are currently going through what you're going through as opposed to even like your own mother, right? Who you're like,
yeah,
you did not go through this the same way I am, right? Like this is a totally different world we're experiencing right now.
it
So,
truly is. There's, and there's so much information being thrown at us all the time. So it's hard to like sift through it and
oh
to
my God,
find
yeah.
what like works. So it also just talking with other moms and kind of figuring out what works for one mom, what, I just don't
Yeah.
think they had that information back when my mom was raising kids. Like, I don't, I, yeah,
Yeah. It wasn't like
because
constantly
it wasn't
being
like overwhelming. Yeah.
right. Right.
Them
Exactly. It
blowing
wasn't
up
just,
their phone.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That brings a whole other like aspect to parenting, and it's just yeah, that's definitely it. If you don't have anxiety already, just knowing like reading some of the articles and stuff that are just constantly available to us, it's like, oh, you weren't thinking about this, were you? Like
Yeah, right. Yeah.
you're like,
It makes
okay,
you
okay.
like question yourself and your intuition, but
Oh
it's nice to
yeah.
have like a group of moms to just get that support and be like, no, your intuition is correct. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh man. Yeah. I feel like I completely relate to that, and where you're just like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. And like I thought I could like trust what I felt, but now I feel like there's so much other information being thrown at me that it's just like I don't even know. Am I completely off the mark here? Like I don't know. Yeah, I get that. Hey there, moms. We're taking a quick break in the podcast. I'm coming to you with my messy hair in my messy kitchen because that's all I have time for today. And I know a lot of you can relate. We all know that the journey into motherhood is filled with really beautiful moments and, let's be honest, a lot of challenges. For a lot of us, one of those challenges is when we reach that 6 week postpartum doctor's appointment, when we're cleared for exercise, and we find ourselves at a loss as to how to exactly start moving again in a way that doesn't lead to injury and frustration and burnout. If this is you, I am thrilled to share something special with you today. If you're looking to gently reintroduce exercise into your life postpartum, my 12-week Reconnect, Rethink, Revive postpartum fitness program might be just what you need. My program is designed with your busy mom life in mind, offering daily 15-minute workouts that are imperfect, realistic, and tailored to your life as a mom. Each session is crafted to help you form the habit of taking a little time, just a little, each day, just for you, to nurture and strengthen your body with grace and understanding, and knowing that it's not always going to be perfect. But it's not just about the workouts. My program includes educational workshops where you'll be learning about your body, understanding the muscle groups that need the most help postpartum, and discovering the why behind it all. Knowledge is power, and I'm here to empower you. Plus, you'll have access to group coaching with me, a certified personal trainer who specializes in postpartum bodies, and you'll join a supportive community of other amazing moms who are on this journey with you. So, if you're ready to reclaim your fitness and your sense of self, visit www.reclaimfit.com to learn more and join me today. Okay, now we have a little twist in the story here. So,
Plot
Kristen,
twist.
a plot twist. Kristen had, oh, so we talked about your early postpartum experience, which, I think a lot of us can really relate to. And and um, then you kind of experienced something that I don't think very many people can relate to. Um, that I still think is really important for you to talk about because I'm sure you have a lot of insights and things that you learned as a result of it. So I would love for you to tell us about your experience with getting very sick partway into your postpartum experience. I think believe Stevie was how old? She was 8 months.
5 months.
5 months? Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. 5 months. old. Tell us what happened. Whatever you feel comfortable with here.
Sure.
You tell us about your amazing, or I don't know. Just go for it. I don't even want to. I want you to describe it for us because I'm gonna not. Yeah, just go for it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was about 6 weeks back into work. We just had our U.S. Women's Open, which was a big event. My baby was 5 months old, and then one day I just felt sick. It was a Tuesday in August, and I started getting flu-like symptoms. I took COVID tests, and nothing. I had varying levels of symptoms. Like one day I would have, one day I would have a fever, but then the next day it would go away. Another day I would have vomiting, and the next day it would go away. So I was always consistently sick, but my symptoms were up and down. So that Sunday, I went to urgent care because I was feeling totally awful. And they said, you don't have COVID, you don't have flu, you're not pregnant, which is another thing. I was like,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
um, so they said I must have a GI bug, but if you don't feel better, in 24 hours, please go to the ER because they can do much more tests than we can.
Mm.
So that evening, I developed a cough, which I hadn't experienced that entire week, and it was pretty debilitating. And
Mm.
so I told my husband, I said, we need to go to the ER in the morning. He had jury duty, but thankfully he was able to not do that.
Mhm.
So he took me into the ER, and then at 8 a.m. and basically within an hour, I was surrounded by this team that just was like, went into action. The doctor said, you're very sick, which was kind of comforting to hear because this entire
Yeah.
time I was like, am I just having the flu? Am I being a baby? No, he said, you are very sick.
Hmm.
I think you have pneumonia. You're not getting enough oxygen. So they just kept doing tests and x-rays and all this stuff. And I just looked over at my husband. I said, it's going to be so expensive. Like, I
Yeah.
was
Oh.
so nervous. But I, the doctor, Sam Melton from Community Hospital of Monterey Peninsula, shout out, he
Mhm.
said, you know, this is a pneumonia. Your lungs are filling up too quickly. Have you been traveling? What is your, like, is it, have you seen any rodent activity? Like, what's your history here? And so I told him I just went to Tahoe and no rodents that I know of. And he said, I think you have hantavirus. And I didn't really know what that was. And he said, yep, I think you have hantavirus. Um, and it was nice to hear a diagnosis, but I didn't really know what that entailed. So they were just trying to keep my oxygen levels stable, but they couldn't stabilize it. So a nurse came in and she said, you know, we're gonna have to put you on life support. So um, I asked if I was like gonna die because I got really scared. And
Yeah.
I just pictured Stevie and I said, is that the last time I said I'm gonna see my baby, you know? And my husband, I just thought I didn't need a single dad. And I just started spiraling and I said, is this like the end at 34? Like, I couldn't imagine not spending seeing my baby grow up. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and So that was tough. And my mom was in Alaska at the time. So I told my husband to please call her and tell her that this is urgent. because I was trying not to worry her, but this is urgent. And I also said, please call my doula and try to sort out donor milk because Stevie needed to be fed and she didn't take formula. So I went under, and then there was a 10-hour period where it was kind of chaotic. My husband describes it. They were trying to get my oxygen levels stable. And once they got my oxygen stable, then my blood pressure dropped. So it was this balancing act. And they knew they needed to send me somewhere. They just were trying to sort out where. And I had to be connected to this ECMO machine, which is basically like an external lung. And the ECMO machine had to be installed by like a specialist. It's a 5-hour process. So they landed on UCSF. They said, okay, they have ECMO machine, they have a room. So a helicopter arrived, and the EMTs get off the helicopter, and there's no ECMO machine, and there's no specialist. And UCSF will only accept me if I'm connected to this machine, because if they took me in the helicopter, all the support I had on ground, I wouldn't survive. So the helicopter had to fly away without me. So then
Oh my gosh.
my husband's like freaking out, even though later the nurses told me that he was the calmest partner they've ever seen. Um, but
Yeah.
so then they sent down an ambulance, and the ambulance had the machine and the specialist. So that took about 2 hours. They connected me, and apparently he was very efficient, the fastest specialist in the West. So he attached me in like 2 hours to this machine, and then I was transferred to UCSF.
Okay.
When I was in UCSF, about 4 days later, I woke up from my medically induced coma, and I had, by that time I was off ECMO, but I still had a breathing tube and feeding tube and all the glamorous things, you know.
Yeah. Super,
Um,
right. Yeah, super fun, I'm sure.
yes, it was connected to all the wires and cords. And yeah, it just, over the course of 4 days, the virus just kind of eased up on my symptom, like my system, just kind of, my lungs were just healing. And at that point, they still didn't know what I had. So
Hmm.
the doctor at Chomp said I had hantavirus, but then when I was transferred and my husband was speaking to UCSF, they were like, no, there's no, she does not, I don't think, it's highly unlikely that she has hantavirus because
Mhm.
it's very rare. Only 78 Californians have had this.
Oh.
So, yeah, basically, I woke up, I was at UCSF, and I saw my family, saw my mom first, and it was just so sweet to see everyone.
Yeah. So, when I heard you had hantavirus, I was like, "No way." I just like, because I knew what it was from my experience. I did, research. Don't talk about what that experience was like for you and what that recovery process was like.
Well, I we spoke earlier about, starting at the beginning of the ladder and going up the first step. It was like I was underground and the ladder was above. I had to like crawl my way to the ladder.
Yeah.
um, that's what it felt like. But you know, waking up, and every day there was a little something more positive. So when I woke up, it was positive. I saw my family. Um, and that night I had a really difficult night, coming down off of that much fentanyl and medicine is no joke. Like I
Yeah.
was hallucinating. I thought my nurse was trying to kill me. Poor
Wow.
thing. I like I felt so bad. But then um other nurses was like, she's fine. We deal with this all the time. It's fine. But I was like so embarrassed.
Mm,
The next day, I kind of spent a little more time with family. And I was told that, I was breathing a little better, that I could probably get my breathing tube out soon. And then 2 days later, I got that out. And then it was the feeding tube out. And a couple days after that. And, there was all these little steps that felt like such big wins in
mm,
my book. And
yeah.
it was really cool. Like, I just, with the feeding tube, like I was so hungry. I was like, anything, please. Uh, I want anything. So, like, even my first little ice chips, that was like amazing. I had applesauce, and I'm like, yes. This is so,
Yeah.
yeah, and then when I got transferred out of the ICU, that was just such a big win for me.
Yeah.
I got I had started taking a couple of steps in the ICU and working with the physical therapist, but I when I was transferred out of the ICU, I was getting wheeled out, and I saw a nurse who I'd never seen before, and he just looked stunned. He was like, "Oh my god," and I said, "Hi." He was like, "I was your nurse when you're in a coma,
Mhm.
and I, cannot believe the progress. Like you were on ECMO and you were attached to so many things, and to see you getting wheeled out of here with only one IV, like that's incredible."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it is incredible, right?" Like, and yeah, so that was really cool. And then that's when I got transferred to my Four Seasons suite, the, big room. I got transferred to regular care, which was amazing, and I got to take a shower, and
Yeah.
then I got to hop on with you gals and say hello and catch up. So it was a really exciting day. Um,
Yeah.
and then from there, I was concerned because I did do some research, and I saw that some hantavirus cases, like the survivors, have long term effects, especially with their lungs. But when I spoke with the doctor, they said, you should be pretty good to go. Like, you're not going to be at 100% for a while, but you will make a full recovery. We are confident in that. And I think it's because of your health beforehand.
Mm.
Um, they attributed a big part of my healing and my speedy recovery on my health. So I was super thankful that, I got movement in, after
Mhm.
postpartum, and I um, was healthy. I didn't have any lung problems beforehand, because
Yeah.
that could have been a really big factor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think, um yeah, that's huge to be able to have had the resources you needed in order to um be where you were at health-wise postpartum, and then so that you could heal like you did, and you had those resources available to you. You took advantage of them. You did the things you needed to do to, you know, prioritize yourself as best as you could in the postpartum, which is really, really hard. Like, that is a huge accomplishment in itself, like it's just hard to prioritize anything that has to do with yourself in postpartum. And so you were able to, um, thankfully have the ability to do that and also just do it. And then you talk about how like this nurse who you didn't even recognize because you weren't awake when you saw him, and then he had seen you from like the lowest of lows, and then as you had progressed to this point where it was just like mind blowing for him. I think even thinking about in terms of our postpartum experience, so many times we don't recognize how far we've come, right? And how we're changing and how we're growing as people. And um, because we're going through it, right? And we're doing it day by day. And anytime we're in a hole, like you said, like, and we're trying to crawl out of it, we're really in the midst of it. And then the people around us can really be um, such an amazing measure of like responding to us and showing us like you have grown so much and you have done so much. And that was it sounds like that was such a moment for you to have him just be like, I saw you when you came in, and you are now here. And that is like a huge thing, right? Like that's a
Yeah,
huge feat.
yeah, definitely. I mean, even now, because I feel like my recovery happened so quick that even now, what are we like 6 months later? I'm like, it's kind of like a fever dream. So sometimes
Mm,
I'll have those days where I'm like, man, I really wish I'm at my full potential before I got pregnant, you know? And then I think back, oh my gosh, look what you've been through this year. Like,
yeah.
have a little patience with yourself. Like,
Yeah.
someday, there was a day where you couldn't even take a step. So for for me to really reflect back on that time and also, postpartum, it's it's really important to remember those moments and to, like you said, see how far I come because
Yeah.
like I was saying before, right? Like we're in phases and
Mm.
sometimes we forget about that phase and because we're in this new phase that we forgot that we've like overcome so much.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and it's good to have people around and support me like you come so far.
Yeah, and it's so nice when we have those people in our lives, that are able to recognize that and bring that to the forefront. Because one, we're not always very nice to ourselves, like you're saying. Like we need to have patience sometimes with ourselves, and it's easy to feel like, oh man, I wish I was at a place where I could do this thing. And it's like, well, it takes a little bit. It takes sometimes an outside view to be like, yes, but you realize what you have done this year, like, or what you have done in the past few months, like, is amazing, and how far you've come, even though it may not feel like you've come very far because you've been in the thick of it. You have come so, so far, and you've done so much, and you are already so strong as a result. And we're always looking to the future to hope and want something else, right? And it's nice every once in a while to be able to take that step back and recognize what you have done and what you have accomplished and what you've gone through and what you've survived. And um you especially, Kristen, you you like, and
I'm a unique case,
yeah.
but yes.
You are an exceptional case in this case, and I hope that you recognize that. And I know you do. You are. Um, I feel like you have some new insights into your life and what's important to you. And I see you with Stevie and how much you just enjoy her. And um, not that you weren't before, of course, but it just, um, gosh, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, no, it's definitely a new view of like savoring every moment with her because I just didn't, there's a new outlook I have because I've been told, you're going on life support. Like I've come to that time where I thought my life was over at 34. So to have this like second chance is such a gift. And I just savor every moment with Stevie, with my family, with friends. Like I'm so lucky to have them and the support. And
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
just I just love you all. You're just amazing.
Well, we are so lucky to have you, and I am just so grateful for everything that um, you've brought to not just my program, like just everything. You always, you're just such a light in this world. And I hope you know that and you always believe that because it's just true. You are just
Thank you.
this bright, shining light. And I want to thank you so much for sharing everything that you did today. It means so much to me. And I hope by sharing your story, others can relate to a lot of the difficulties that many of us experience, and maybe even some of us that experience those exceptional things that happen in life where we find ourselves with these ginormous obstacles and unexpected things that we need to overcome. That it's something that can be done. It's just really hard, and feeling like it's hard is normal, and and it's okay. And yeah, I thank you so much, Kristen, for agreeing to be on the podcast. And I hope this isn't the last time you're on the podcast, and that we'll have you on here again sometime soon. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Susan, you're amazing. And thank you for all you do for us moms. And it's just amazing that you have this platform.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And I will see you again in a couple weeks. All right. Thanks for listening. Do me a favor and make sure to subscribe to my podcast so you know when the next one is ready. I'm not always consistent, so this is probably the best way to know. While you're at it, if you liked this episode, I would love it if you would rate and share with friends as well. I don't have many listeners yet, but I think these are important things for people to hear. And the best way for others to hear it is for you to pass it along. Also, be sure to look for me on Instagram at Reclaim Fitness LLC. And please check out my free Facebook group, where you can get lots of content, workouts, and information on a more regular basis. Go to www.facebook.com/groups/postpartum move. That's postpartummove. The link for that is also in the show notes, so take a look. Thanks for joining.